Millionaire rushed to hospital to visit his sick daughter. What he saw his fiancée doing shocked him. Ethan Ward's phone buzzed at 10:52 p.m. with a message that turned his whole body to ice. "Lila isn't breathing. Come home now." For 1 second, his brain refused to process it. His eyes just stared at the message, as if staring long enough would rearrange the words into something more ordinary. Something like, "Lila's asleep," or "I'll take Lila to school tomorrow for you." But the words didn't change. There were only 6 of them, and they nailed themselves into his chest. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the carpet with a soft thud, a sound far too quiet for news so devastating. Ethan shot to his feet so fast the chair behind him slammed into the wall. The air in the room felt sucked out. The pilot who had logged thousands of hours through storms and turbulence, who had calmly handled an engine anomaly at 30,000 feet, now had to grip the edge of the desk because his legs would no longer hold him up. He bent down to grab the phone, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it again. The message was from Marta, the woman who had taken care of Lila for 3 years, ever since his wife, Elena, had died. Marta was not someone who exaggerated, not someone who panicked. If she wrote, "isn't breathing," it meant things were far beyond, "there's a problem." Ethan hit call immediately. It rang only once. "Marta?" His voice came out rough, barely recognizable. Chaos bled through the speaker, distant sirens, hospital announcements, someone speaking urgently in the background. Inside all that noise was Marta's ragged breathing. "Mr. Ward," her voice broke. "Lila, they're working on her." They said her heart stopped for a bit. "You need to come home now." "What happened?" Ethan almost shouted into the phone. "Why isn't she breathing? Marta, talk to me." There was a brief silence, thick with choked-back sobs. When she spoke again, her voice dropped, as if she were afraid someone might overhear. "It was dinner. Something with nuts?" She broke out, started coughing, then just collapsed. "I called 911. They came. They worked on her. But Mr. Ward, the doctor, they're not sure about the next 24 hours. She paused, drew in a shaky breath. That last sentence smashed what was left inside him. Ethan didn't remember hanging up, didn't remember grabbing his things. 1 minute, he was still in the hotel room, staring at the black screen. The next, he was sprinting through the lobby, tie askew, the top 2 buttons of his shirt undone, his carry-on swinging from his hand like a dropped thought. The night clerk looked up, ready to offer a polite greeting, but Ethan had already blown past, shoving through the glass doors and into the December cold of Denver. The air cut at his lungs, but he barely felt anything except the numbers flashing in his mind. Lila isn't breathing. Lila isn't breathing. Lila isn't breathing. He pulled up the rideshare app, his finger sliding clumsily over the screen. The car arrived in 3 minutes, but to Ethan, it felt like 3 hours. He yanked the door open, tossed his bag onto the seat, and dropped into the back. "Denver International," he said, "as fast as you can." The driver glanced at him in the mirror, ready to complain about the hour and the speed limit, but one look at Ethan's face, and he just nodded and pressed the accelerator. The highway at night was a ribbon of yellow lights stretching into forever. Ethan unlocked his phone, his hands shaking so much he had to steady them with both palms just to tap. He searched for the last flight home to Seattle, eyes scanning each line of text as though they were written in a foreign language. There was a flight at 1:05 a.m., seats still available. He booked it, entered his information, almost mistyped his own name. While he waited for the confirmation, the screen dimmed, reflecting his face back at him. Gaunt, exhausted, dark circles he'd always blamed on long-haul routes. He stared at the man in the glass and suddenly understood. This was the man who took extra red-eye shifts to avoid looking at Elena's empty chair at the dinner table. The man who had handed almost all of Lila's childhood to a caregiver and told himself he was just securing her future. The man who had decided to marry someone his daughter had never truly trusted. The phone buzzed again. Reservation confirmed. Ethan exhaled, not with relief exactly, but like a drowning man who'd managed to break the surface long enough for a single breath. "I'm coming home, Lila," he murmured, eyes on the receding lights outside. "This time, I'm not leaving you alone again." The car pulled into the departures lane. Airport lights burned against the night sky. Ethan closed his fingers around the phone as if letting go would make the world fracture all over again. He hauled his bag out, striding into the terminal, each footstep a silent plea. "Please breathe, Lila. Please just hold on for me." The plane took off from Denver at 1:07 a.m., 2 minutes later than scheduled, but to Ethan, those 2 minutes felt like 2 years. The window seat had become far too small for a man trembling with anxiety because his mind was more than 1,000 miles away. In a cold emergency room where his daughter was fighting to breathe. As the plane tilted upward into the black sky, Ethan forced himself to take a deep breath, but his chest tightened as if someone were squeezing it hard. He had flown through violent storm clouds before, had handled emergencies with absolute calm. But now he couldn't do the simplest thing: sit still. He placed his phone on his lap, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the window, where Denver had already turned into scattered dots of light behind him. Elena once said that every city seen from above looks like stars fallen to the earth. He had loved the way she said it, gentle, poetic, like the way she saw the world. "Elena, if you can hear me, please don't let our daughter go." Ethan closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, whispering a sentence he wasn't sure was a prayer or just pure desperation. "She has to live. Please let her live." And when the plane's wheels touched the runway, he nearly sprang out of his seat, grabbed his suitcase, and waited for the door to open like a man about to run into the greatest battle of his life, the battle to win his daughter back. The corridor of Seattle Children's Hospital glowed with harsh white light, cold and unfeeling, as if every lamp were shining down on a fear no one dared to face. Ethan all but stormed inside, breath splintering, a suitcase dragging behind him, though he couldn't remember how he'd even brought it along. The sting of antiseptic hit his lungs hard enough to make his eyes burn. "Where's the pediatric ICU?" he asked the triage nurse, voice raw. "End of the hall. Turn left. Room 214. But Ethan didn't hear the rest. He ran. Each step landed like a hammer blow inside his chest. When he reached the glass door of room 214, he stopped, not from exhaustion, but because the scene inside slammed into him like a bucket of ice. Lila lay so tiny on the ICU bed, wires and tubes tangled around her small body. A soft oxygen cannula rested beneath her nose. Her skin was pale, the areas around her eyes swollen and blotchy. Every frail breath made her chest lift and fall as if she were battling the very air. And beside her, Camille, his second wife. But her left hand wasn't resting beside her or on a chair. It was curled tightly around a pillow, hovering far too close to Lila's fragile face. Ethan shoved the door open. Camille jolted. Mascara streaked her cheeks, her eyes red and glossy. When she saw Ethan, she gasped and stepped toward him like a woman shattered by grief. "Ethan." Oh God, I didn't know what to do. Camille threw herself at him, but Ethan froze. He didn't return the embrace. "Don't touch me. Stay away from me. You're disgusting," he said, his voice so low it was almost a growl. The pillow slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Thud, an accusation echoing through the room. Camille staggered back, her eyelids twitching uncontrollably. "Ethan, listen to me. I was only trying to make her more comfortable." "Stay away from her." Camille blinked rapidly, her expression twisting, as if deeply offended. "You're accusing me?" "Ethan, I was trying to help her feel better." Ethan Ward crossed the distance to the bed in 3 long strides, then collapsed to his knees as though his legs had suddenly lost all strength. His hand hovered trembling in the air, too afraid to touch his little girl, because the moment he did, he would have to confront a truth no parent was ever ready to face. On the bed, Lila Ward breathed in weak, fragile pulls, each one like a thin thread struggling to hold on to life. Her tiny body seemed to disappear into the sea of white sheets, leaving only the heart monitor blinking 72, a faint, flickering signal of hope. Ethan lowered his head, resting his forehead against the cold metal rail, drawing in a long breath, a breath of a father clinging to the last shred of composure he had left. At least, she was still here. Then he rose, turning to face the woman trembling near the back wall, his wife, Camille Stone. "Tell me, how did this start?" Ethan's voice was low and stretched tight, like a wire pulled to its breaking point. Camille clutched her elbows, her breath coming out in broken, strangled bursts as if someone had a hand around her throat. She was behaving very difficult at dinner. She threw her food. She talked back. I tried to calm her down, but she just kept getting... Ethan cut her off, his voice icy. And then Lila ate something that made her stop breathing? Camille swallowed hard, stepping back. I didn't know the dessert had nuts. I swear, I didn't know. Ethan's jaw tightened. Where was the EpiPen, Camille? Where was the one thing that could have saved her, he asked, each word sharp and precise like a blade. Camille avoided his gaze. I couldn't find it. I kept looking, but it wasn't there. I panicked. Everything was spinning. Lila started coughing, her face turning red. I just froze. I didn't know what to do. I kept telling her to breathe slowly, as if she could even listen. The monitor continued its steady beeping, echoing through the small room like a silent accusation. She reached out a hand, searching for something to cling to. And the pillow, I was holding it because my head felt like it was going to explode. The machines, the beeping, her breathing, everything blended into one storm. I just wanted to press it down to drown the noise so I could think. I wasn't thinking straight, Ethan, I swear. I didn't... Ethan, please believe me. I would never, ever try to hurt Lila. Ethan Ward didn't look at the woman standing at the far end of the room. His eyes stayed fixed on the small rise and fall of his daughter's chest. Lila Ward, each shallow breath tapping out life one fragile beat at a time. The numbers on the heart monitor were the only thing keeping him from collapsing. Behind him, Camille Stone's voice rose, tiny and brittle, as if she feared even her own sound. "Ethan, is there anything else you want to know?" He didn't answer, didn't turn. Let the silence choose for him. Camille drew in a deep breath, trying to keep her voice from cracking. When I stepped into this marriage, I truly believed I could carry everything. I thought if I tried hard enough, I could blend into the life you and Lila had together, become someone she could rely on. But every day I saw so clearly. In your heart, she always came before me. And I understand. That's how it's supposed to be. Ethan remained silent, never taking his eyes off Lila. Camille continued, her voice trembling harder. But I'm still your wife. And sometimes, I just wanted you to see me, even once. I'm tired, Ethan. Tired of being second place. I don't want to compete with a child for love, but I also don't want to disappear like I never existed. Ethan finally turned to her, his gaze slow and cold as a midnight lake. And because of that, you almost let her die? No! Camille cried out, the word slicing through her as if it scraped her skin raw. That's not what happened. I made mistakes, yes, but not out of malice. I lost control. I panicked, but I never meant to hurt her. You have to understand. Some things spiral beyond intention. She stepped back until her spine hit the wall. Her arms hung limp, her eyes flooded with humiliation and fear. I can't keep living in a house where every breath I take is judged. Lila looks at me like I'm a stranger. Marta doesn't believe a word I say. And you only look at me when something goes wrong. I'm exhausted. I can't take it anymore." Ethan replied with a calm so sharp it bordered on cruel. "If that's what you want, then go." The words fell through the room like a door slamming shut. Camille stared at him, stunned, eyes wide. You really mean that? If you can't be someone who makes my daughter feel safe in her own home, then yes, you should leave. My lawyer will send the paperwork. You'll receive what your prenup grants you. But the lives of my daughter and me will no longer include you." Camille gave a broken, bitter laugh, the sound cracking into a wounded gasp. "Of course, you choose her again." "I will choose her in every circumstance," Ethan said without hesitation. That is what a father is supposed to do. Rage twisted across Camille's face, contorting it like a mask splitting down the middle. "You'll regret this. I gave up my entire life to enter this family. I abandoned everything to stand beside you, and you throw me away like I'm disposable." Ethan answered instantly. "You didn't give up anything, Camille. You saw a widower, wealthy, shattered, and alone, and you thought it was your chance to step in. I didn't see it before, but now I do, very clearly." Camille opened her mouth to retort, but the door suddenly burst open. A woman in her 40s stepped inside, her coat damp from the Seattle rain, a clipboard in one hand, and a badge from the Seattle Police Department pinned over her chest. "I'm Detective Naomi Pierce," she said, her voice calm but edged. "Sorry for the interruption, but I need both of you to provide statements about what happened tonight. If possible, I'd like to begin immediately." Ethan glanced at Lila, the child whose breath had nearly been stolen because he put his trust in the wrong person. Then he nodded. "Yes, Detective, I think it's time we clear everything up." Camille paled. Her gaze darted between Ethan and the detective. Detective Naomi flipped open her notebook and clicked her pen. "Mrs. Stone, we'll begin with you." Camille swallowed hard. Camille Stone sat in the chair by the window, keeping the farthest possible distance between herself and the man standing across the room. When she finally spoke, her tears were gone. Only a voice held together by sheer force, like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Lila refused to eat dinner. She kept knocking her plate aside, making a mess on the table, then talking back to me. I tried to stay calm 3 times, called her gently, tried to soothe her, but she ignored me completely. In the corner, Ethan Ward still didn't look at her, his gaze locked on the fragile rise and fall of his daughter's small chest, where each trembling breath clung to life like a thin thread. "Time?" Detective Naomi Pierce asked, her tone steady and sharp. Camille swallowed. "Around 6:30, maybe a few minutes later." "And where was Marta at that time?" "She was doing the laundry." Naomi scribbled a few notes, then lifted her eyes. "So it was just you and the child?" Camille nodded. "Yes, I was alone with her." "And what happened next?" Camille twisted her hands together, her nails digging into her skin. "I was tired. I was truly exhausted. Ever since I came into this house, the child has tested me every single day. She doesn't want me there, and I feel it constantly. Tonight, I was pushed beyond what I could tolerate." Naomi closed her notebook, then fixed Camille with a gaze that cut through every layer of pretense. "Mrs. Stone, do you love that child?" The question hit Camille like a slap of ice water. She straightened abruptly, as if Naomi had just touched the wound she tried hardest to hide. "That question is unfair." "It's perfectly fair," Naomi replied. "Do you love your husband's daughter?" Camille blinked, parted her lips, closed them again. Once, twice, a 3rd time. Finally, she spoke through clenched teeth. "No, I don't love her. Satisfied now. I tried. God knows I tried. But she isn't mine. She reminds me every day that I'm just someone who came after. I'm just the fool who thought I could replace a dead woman." Only then did Ethan move. He stepped forward so quickly, Camille shrank back by instinct. His face was only inches from hers, his voice low and cold as forged steel. Leave this hospital, my house, and the lives of me and my daughter. You will never come near her again. Not one step." Camille's face twisted, her eyes burning with anger that had festered far too long. "That child ruined everything. Do you know what it's like living with her? She looks at me like I'm a monster. She worships her dead mother like some saint, and I'm always compared to that shadow. Elena perfect, Elena wonderful, Elena never did anything wrong. And Lila, that child, she needs to learn the world doesn't revolve around her." Naomi instantly stepped between them. "Mrs. Stone, my advice is that you leave now. We'll continue the rest at the station tomorrow morning." Camille let out a cold, bitter laugh. "What exactly am I being charged with?" "That depends on our investigation," Naomi said evenly. "At the moment, I'm asking you to leave this area voluntarily. If you refuse, I'll request an officer to escort you." Camille snatched her handbag and strode to the door, her heels striking the floor like a series of angry knives. At the threshold, she turned back, her eyes glinting like the final blade she had left to throw. "I hope the girl wakes up, Ethan. Truly. Because if she doesn't, you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you chose a business trip over being with your daughter. You weren't there, you've never been there, so don't pretend I'm the only villain in this story." She slammed the door, but that small, sharp click echoed like the final judgment passed on her. Naomi stepped out of the room for a few minutes to make a call. Ethan stood leaning against the wall outside the ICU, his hands trembling slightly, his mind spinning. Inside, Lila still lay there, breathing weakly but steadily, while Camille had been escorted by officers to a separate holding room within the hospital. When Naomi returned, her expression had changed, heavier, harder, as if she had just seen something that should not exist. "Mr. Ward," she said, her voice turning professional but edged with warning. "We reviewed all the information Camille Hale previously gave you." Ethan looked up. "What do you mean?" Naomi opened a thin folder in her hand. "Camille isn't her real name. She's used multiple identities over the past 8 years. Her real name is Carolyn Hale. And, Ethan, she has a history involving 2 families exactly like yours." A cold shock shot down Ethan's spine. Naomi flipped to the first page. Case 1. Jonathan Pierce, Dallas. His wife died of cancer. He lived alone with his 6-year-old daughter, Ava. Caroline showed up in a volunteer club and started dating Jonathan. 3 months later, Ava suffered severe injuries from a fall down the stairs. Naomi paused, her voice lowering. The little girl told the doctor Caroline pushed her. Ethan gripped the edge of the bench, his nails digging into the wood. Jonathan didn't believe his daughter, Naomi continued. Just like you didn't believe Lila. He thought it was jealousy. Caroline left a month after the incident, before the police could question her further. Naomi turned to the second file. Case 2. Michael Dawson, Houston. Another widowed father, a 7-year-old daughter named Lily. After Michael married Caroline, the child drowned in the pool. Ethan shot to his feet. No, that's impossible. I called the local department, Naomi said slowly. There wasn't enough evidence to classify it as a crime. Caroline claimed the girl slipped into the pool by herself. The report labeled it an accident. She met Ethan's eyes directly. But Michael never recovered from that. He had to be admitted to a psychological treatment center, and he's still there today. Ethan felt his breath collapse in his chest. All the sounds of the hospital seemed to fade away, leaving only the pounding of his heart roaring in his ears. Naomi continued, Mr. Ward, she wasn't just a woman unfit to be a stepmother. She is a predator with intent. She targets widowed fathers, with young daughters, with money, with grief. Ethan braced both hands against the cold wall. "Lila," his voice broke. "She could have died." "No," Naomi replied. "She was saved because of Marta." Ethan closed his eyes. The image of his daughter in the ICU flashed behind his eyelids, her pale face, her tiny hand gripping the blanket. And him. A father who never realized the nightmare growing inside his own home. "Ethan," Naomi said softly, "I know this is difficult, but you have to accept that Camille, Carolyn, didn't just want to hurt Lila. She planned this." Ethan opened his eyes, and something in his expression had changed. Not just pain anymore, but clarity. A father finally seeing the monster he had unknowingly invited into his house. When Naomi left to begin processing Camille's case, Ethan returned to the ICU. As the door closed behind him, the room suddenly felt smaller, quieter, filled with a kind of pain he didn't know where to place. Lila lay in the middle of the white sheets, so small that Ethan's chest tightened at the sight. Faint bruises still marked her wrist, marks he now understood all too well. His mind kept replaying the footage. Camille, the pillow, those 43 horrifying seconds. He pulled a chair close and sat slowly, afraid even the slightest sound would disturb her. Lila's tiny hand rested atop the blanket. Ethan reached out, touching it gently, as if afraid she might shatter like glass. "Sweetheart," he whispered, voice cracking on the very first word. "I'm so sorry." The phrase spilled out from a place he had buried for far too long. His chest trembled with every breath. "I wasn't here. I buried myself in work just to escape the pain of losing your mom, to avoid facing what I'd lost." He bowed his head, a tear falling onto Lila's hand. "But by running away, I ran away from you too. I left others to care for you. I left you alone with fears I never even noticed." He inhaled shakily, trying to keep his voice from breaking. "I was supposed to protect you. I should have seen that something was wrong with Camille. I should have listened to you, listened to Marta, but I didn't." As if responding, Lila's fingers twitched. Ethan startled, eyes lifting, and her eyelids fluttered, opening just a sliver. 32 hours after being admitted, something that had felt impossibly distant finally happened. Lila Ward's eyes opened, truly opened, slow, but aware. The doctors had said it might take days, maybe longer. But Lila, she had always been the one to defy expectations. Her gaze drifted up to the ceiling, then to the tubes, the IV lines, the monitors blinking steadily, like the heartbeat of the entire room. And finally, her eyes found the person sitting beside her bed. Ethan Ward. Her little face tightened into a fragile smile. "Daddy?" Ethan leaned in close, his hand trembling as he cupped her cheek. "Hello, my little angel. Welcome back to me." Lila swallowed, her voice so hoarse it sounded like a whisper carried away by the wind. "My throat hurts." "I know, sweetheart," Ethan murmured, brushing a finger through her hair, messy from hours of lying still. "The doctors will help with that. But can you tell me, do you remember anything?" Lila's eyes shimmered, tears rising so quickly they seemed to quiver on the edge of spilling. "The cake," she whispered. "She made me eat it. She said I was a coward, like Mommy. She said if I ate it, I'd prove I was brave." Something cold and razor-sharp shot down Ethan's spine. Anger, fury, and a grief he never imagined he would hear from his daughter's own lips. But his voice when he spoke was gentle, the voice of a man holding his heart in his hands. "Lila, you are braver than anyone I have ever known, but you don't need to prove that to anyone, especially not by hurting yourself." She blinked, lips trembling. "Where is she? Where's Miss Camille?" Ethan drew a slow breath, softening his tone. "She's gone, sweetheart. gone, and she won't come back. Lila's whole body softened, and only then did Ethan realize how long she had carried that fear, far longer than he had ever known. "Really, Daddy?" she whispered, so small her voice nearly vanished beneath the rhythmic beeping of the machines. "Really," Ethan said, taking her tiny hand between both of his. "From now on, it's just you, me, and Marta, I promise." Lila closed her eyes, her hand still gripping his, as if afraid he might disappear. "I'm so tired, Daddy." "Then sleep," Ethan whispered. "I'll be right here. And when you open your eyes, I'll still be here." She let out a thin, fragile breath. "You won't go on trips anymore, right?" The question tightened Ethan's chest, hurt him so deeply he had to close his eyes to keep from breaking down in front of her. "No," he said, his voice cracking for the first time. "I'll stay with you. Work can wait. It can wait forever if it needs to. You're what matters." Lila squeezed his hand gently. "I missed you." Ethan pressed a trembling kiss to her forehead. "I missed you more than you know, sweetheart." Lila drifted into sleep again, this time a peaceful sleep, not from exhaustion, but because she was finally safe. 2 weeks after the hospital incident, Ethan walked into the King County Courthouse, feeling as if he were stepping onto a battlefield. His hand clutched the folder so tightly the edges had curled. The hallway smelled of old wood and tension, lives waiting to be decided. Naomi walked beside him, composed and sharp. Marta was there too, gripping her purse like it was the last anchor she had. Across the room sat Camille, or rather Caroline Hale, beside her attorney, eyes wet, face twisted in the expression of someone claiming to be the victim. Ethan's stomach tightened. This hearing wouldn't just determine temporary custody. It would determine whether he was considered an unfit father. The judge entered. Everyone rose. "We're here to determine temporary placement for minor child Lila Ward," the judge said calmly. Camille's attorney rose first, a smooth-voiced man in a gray suit. "Your Honor, my client, Camille Hale, is a misunderstood caretaker. She attempted to care for Lila while her husband was frequently absent. We have records showing Mr. Ward was away from home for long stretches, leaving the child without consistent parental support." Ethan closed his eyes. True, he had been gone too much, and now it was being wielded like a blade. The attorney continued. "On the night of the incident, my client called 911. Objection, Naomi rose. "Marta made the call. We have the recording." Whispers rippled across the courtroom. "Sustained," the judge said. The attorney quickly adjusted. "Regardless, my client was the only emotionally stable adult present. There is no clear proof she intended harm." Naomi activated the screen behind her. "Then let's watch the evidence." Silence fell as the footage played. Camille forcing chocolate into Lila's mouth. Lila coughing, terrified. Camille watching without helping. The 43 seconds with the pillow in the ICU. Every frame struck the courtroom like a hammer. Camille sobbed, but the sound felt practiced. Her attorney interjected, "There is no audio. We cannot." "And here," Naomi said, placing papers on the table, "is the search history from Caroline Hale's laptop and records of 2 previous child victims." The room inhaled sharply. The attorney's hands shook as he grabbed the documents. The judge turned to Ethan. "Mr. Ward, do you wish to speak?" Ethan stood, palms cold against the wood of the podium. "Your Honor," he began quietly, "I've made mistakes. I was away too much. I missed signs of fear I should have noticed. I failed as a father." Camille looked up at him quickly, hopeful, thinking he was damning himself. But Ethan continued, "But I never stopped loving my daughter, and I will spend the rest of my life making this right. Lila almost died, and I will never, never let her be in danger again." His voice strengthened. I'm asking for full custody. I will step back from long-haul flights. I will be with her every day. Please, let me do what I should have done from the start. Be her father." The courtroom held its breath. The judge wrote for several long seconds, then spoke. "After reviewing the evidence, temporary full custody is granted to Mr. Ethan Ward. As for Mrs. Caroline Hale, she is to have no contact with the child and will be remanded until her criminal trial." Camille screamed, "No, Ethan, you can't! I love you! I love Lila!" Ethan turned away. The decision was made. And for the first time in months, Ethan felt he was finally bringing his daughter back to safety. 6 months passed like a quiet stream, slow enough to heal, fast enough that Ethan sometimes startled at how much life had changed for the two of them. The house that once carried the weight of tense, suffocating months had grown warm again. The kitchen, the place where the chocolate incident happened, had been completely renovated by Ethan. New table, new chairs, even new paint on the walls. Not to erase the memory, but to rewrite it. Ethan sat on the front steps with Marta, a cup of hot tea in hand, his eyes never leaving his daughter. Lila still startled in the night sometimes, still flinched when someone came too close. But she was healing. And so was Ethan. The silent wounds, the ones without blood, without bandages, were finally beginning to close. Marta smiled, her voice soft as a breeze. "She looks much brighter than before." Ethan nodded, pride warming his voice. "She's found her joy again. And so have I." His phone buzzed. A new message from Detective Naomi Pierce. "The verdict is out. Camille Stone has been convicted on all counts, 32 years. No parole. She won't be getting out." Ethan read the message once and erased it. Not out of anger, but because that part of his life had finally died. Camille wasn't the past anymore. She was gone, and the weight she carried with her went too. Ahead of him was the future. "Daddy!" Lila called, her tiny hands waving eagerly. "Come play with me." Ethan laughed, a sound he once thought he had lost forever. All right, I'm coming." He ran across the grass and lifted Lila high into the air. She squealed with delight, her legs swinging as if she were flying. Ethan whispered, "You see, Elena, Lila is strong like you. She's coming back to life, and so am I." A gentle breeze drifted through the yard, brushing past father and daughter, as if Elena herself were finally letting them go, blessing the life they were stepping into. Ethan was no longer the man who ran from his pain. He was the father who had learned to stay, to face it, and to remain. One chapter had closed, Camille imprisoned, the past dimming away. A new chapter opened, Lila growing up surrounded by love, with no shadow trailing her anymore.